Hi, my name's Les Humphrey, and today I'm going to show you how to answer the CPC Module 4 questions. We're going to be using two vehicles today. The vehicle behind me now is our main vehicle we use at Acton head office. If you go to one of our outstation test centres, we could be using one of these other vehicles that have got the boxes on. I will show the main differences between the two vehicles today. So what do we need to know? Well, the test lasts approximately 30 minutes. You'll be asked 5 questions. With the pass mark, you must score at least 75% in 4 of the questions, and on one of the questions you must get at least 100%. So what we're going to do now is go through all of the questions one by one, starting off with question 1. Okay, let's get started now. Question 1, loading the vehicle. Your fully laden vehicle is ready for you to do a delivery. Can you show me the checks you'd carry out to make sure the vehicle isn't overloaded? So we explained to the examiner the first thing we do is check the paperwork so we know how much the goods weigh. We could also check the load to see what it says on the load itself. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to check the plating certificate. So what we need to do on this vehicle, we come to the door, we're going to open up the door where we'll find the plating certificate. Okay, so on this vehicle we're going to find the plating certificate on the door. We can find on here the gross vehicle weight, which is 12 tonne on this particular vehicle, train weight, front and rear axle weights, and from that we can work out our payload. I'm going to close this door. Next thing we're going to do, we'll say to the examiner we're going to check the tyres. So we're going to go to the tyres and look for signs of any bulging. So we've walked down to the rear of the vehicle, looking at the rear tyres here, looking for any bulging at the sides. What we're going to do now is go down and have a look in between the tyres. And here we're looking between the tyres to make sure there's no signs of any bulging. The tyres touching, kissing as they call it. Okay, so we've checked in between the tyres. Now the examiner will say, if you're still uncertain, what other checks could you make? And we'd explain that we take the vehicle to the nearest weighbridge where we could get it weighed, and that way we could be certain. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So question number 2, security of vehicle and its contents. This is an explain question, so you're going to tell him the answers. He will say, you need to leave your vehicle, where might you consider parking it? So we're going to tell him that we'd only park in a secure, well-lit vehicle park. Where possible, park with the rear doors against the wall or backed up against another vehicle. Then he's going to ask you another question. Can you explain what safety checks and security precautions you should take? Well, first of all, we'd say we'd remove the keys, we'd lock the doors, we'd activate or explain the use of any other features like alarms or padlocks, and then we'd walk around and do a security check, for example, checking all the seals and the doors are securely closed. Okay, so question 3 and question 7 are fairly similar. Same checks are made, just a slightly different question. So question 3, preventing criminality and trafficking of illegal immigrants. This one is a bit of a show and explain. The examiner will say, you were parked at a border crossing and have left the vehicle unattended. Show me what checks you'd make before driving through customs. So we're going to start off with the outside. First thing we do is check around the front area. So we're going to step back from the vehicle. And what we're going to do is search up the top to make sure there's nobody on the roof, and then we'll scan the vehicle as we come down, and we're going to crouch down and we're going to look underneath the vehicle to make sure nobody's hanging onto the axles, no packages have been secured. Now we need to make these same checks whether we're using the flatbed vehicle at Acton or whether we've gone to one of the DVSA test centres. So now we're going to come around the side of the vehicle, just scanning all round, and we're going to have a look up on top again to make sure there's nobody on the roof, scanning the whole vehicle, coming down, looking underneath, we can see it's all clear, no people hanging onto the axles, no packages, etc. And now we're going to go around to the rear of the vehicle and we'll make those same checks again. So we'll get to the back and then we'll look up the top again, and then we'll look down through the bottom of the vehicle underneath. We're going to start off with the outside. First thing we do is check around the front area. So checking any little crevices around here, in between the vents here, on both sides. We'll search all around underneath here, just looking for anywhere they could hide things. Now we're going to open up the bonnet, pull it from the bottom. Any places where drugs etc. could be hidden, we're searching round. That's all fine. We're closing the bonnet down now. We'll come around the side. First thing we come across is the front wheel arch, so we're going to get down and search underneath here. That's all looking fine. Yeah. But at this point mention about wind deflectors, there's a possibility that somebody could hide in there, so we'd search there. And if we had a solid box, we'd be searching on top of the roof in case anybody was up there. Then we'll come around to the engine compartment. We'll take a good look all around here, making sure there's nothing hidden. Searching on top of this tank area and looking underneath all the bodywork in case there's anybody hanging onto the axles. Come around to the rear arch here now, searching on top and underneath, all looking fine. Searching the back area, and now we'll go around to the back of the vehicle. We're going to open the doors, take a look inside, make sure there's nothing stashed away, no people hiding, and close it down. We'll search underneath the framework here. That's all fine. Okay, so if you're using one of our box vehicles, first thing we need to do is open the doors. Make sure you pin them back, just in case the wind catches them. We'll take a look down this side. Taking a look down this side, just to let you know there is no requirement to get into the vehicle. At this point we'd say to the examiner we'd also search the roof to see if there's any signs of damage, and on a clear roof like this we could see if there was anybody on top. Okay. So coming around the far side of the vehicle now, first thing we're going to come across is this box. We need to look inside, so we'll undo the handles. We've just got some straps in there, but it's all fine. Make sure you lock it up properly. We're going to search around the arch, all looks fine, under the framework, underneath the mudguard, searching under the framework again. So we come along to the fuel tank. On the test we're just going to make a visual inspection. We'd explain to the examiner that we'd normally remove the cap and look to make sure there's nothing hidden inside, maybe attached to a piece of string. Again we come across the engine compartment, so we'll search all around here. Finally we come to the front wheel and we check under the arch just like we did the other side. That looks fine. Okay, so that's completed the exterior checks. Now we're going to check inside the cab. Let's open the door first of all. First thing we come across is this little pocket here, so we'll just search inside. That's okay. Now we want to check behind the chair. I'll just slide it forward and we'll take a good look behind there. That's all okay. The chair back. Now we need to get inside the cab. Remember to use 3 points of contact, safety at all times. So first of all, one hand on, second hand on, up we go. Now we're inside the cab. We're going to search up in any of these little crevices here. Same on this side here. Inside the ashtray where anything could be hidden, this little cubby hole here. And inside here. Now we're going to go around the other side of the vehicle where we can check in more detail there. So again, 3 points of contact to get out. One hand on, foot down, and walk down the stairs. Okay, so we come around the other side of the vehicle. So now we're going to open the door. Same kind of checks again, searching in the glove area here. We're going to pull the seat forward and we'll check behind, make sure there's nothing in there. Turn the seat. We'll climb back in the cab, 3 points of contact. Searching up above, we'll also check under the sun visors. Checking all around here, any little places stuff could be hidden. Okay, and that's completed the interior checks. Okay, so question 5, ability to prevent physical risk. I'd like you to show me what safety checks you'd make on this vehicle before driving it on the road. Okay, so we're going to check the vehicle over. This is the only question that you're allowed to use a check sheet, which we prepared for you. We do recommend you use it so you don't forget anything. We're going to start off inside the cab, so let's jump inside. Okay, so now we're inside the cab. We're going to make a few checks. Remember to use your checklist so that you don't forget anything. So first thing we're going to do on the list is check the washers and wipers. So we turn the ignition on and we just simply check the operation of the washers and wipers. We can see they're clearing the screen, that's fine. And now we're going to check the operation of the horn. And now we're going to check the mirrors. So we'll explain to the examiner what checks we're making on the mirrors. First of all, we'll check that they're correctly adjusted, they're clean, free of defects, and they're secure. Next thing we're going to do is check the instrument panel. Okay, so now we're going to turn on the ignition and make sure all the warning lights are working. Then we'll start up the engine and we'll check that the air tank is reading full, that we have all the warning lights and buzzers have gone out, and then we've got sufficient fuel for the journey. We're going to check in the mirrors and we're going to give the engine a little rev. We'll tell the examiner we're looking for excessive engine smoke. We can turn the ignition off now, and now we'd explain about a rolling check. There is no requirement to move the vehicle forward on the test, but we'd explain that normally we'd drive the vehicle forward and test the brakes. We'd also want to check for air leaks, so there's a couple of ways we can do it. If you've got an assistant with you, you can hold your foot on the brake while they walk around the outside and listen for an air leak. Otherwise, maybe we could use a piece of wood and jam the pedal down and then walk around the outside of the vehicle ourselves. When checking for air leaks, make sure you've got the door or window open, depress the brake pedal, listen for any air leaks and check the gauges for any drops in air pressure. Next thing to do is check all the lights are working. So we could at this point ask the examiner to assist us in checking the brake lights by simply would turn the ignition on, he'd go to the back, apply the foot brake, watch for the examiner to say good, and that's it, and we'll turn them off. And now we're going to turn the hazard lights on. You need the ignition on for the rear fog light, turn the dipped headlights on and also operate the full beam. And now we're going to exit the vehicle and check the lights and other things outside. Okay, so we come to the outside of the vehicle now. First thing we come across is the front wheel. We need to explain to the examiner that we check the tread depth to make sure it's got at least 1 millimetre of tread across 3/4 of the breadth of the tyre and around a continuous band. No damage to the side walls, no cord showing, no bulges, no cuts or splits, and that it looks correctly inflated. Then we're going to check the wheel nuts, making sure that none of the wheel nuts stick out any further than the others. Okay, so if you had wheel nut indicators like we've got on this particular vehicle, you'd explain to the examiner, you'd make sure they was lined up. If they wasn't lined up, it could indicate a loose wheel nut. Now we're going to come across the repeater light for the indicator at the side here, make sure that's working. And then we've got these side marker lights down here. You need to make sure that they're fitted, clean, and not damaged, and see they're working. Same with this one. Now coming across the rear wheel, same checks again, making sure it's got the correct tread depth limit. We're also going to get down and check in between the tyres to make sure there's no debris stuck in between them. And here now we're looking in between the tyres to make sure there's no signs of any bulging, tyres touching, kissing, and no debris, rocks etc. in between the two tyres. Now we'll go around the rear of the vehicle. So around the back of the vehicle, we're going to check all the lights are working, clean and fitted. Checking the number plate is clean as well. When using one of our box vehicles, we need to check the rear marker lights up the top. So coming around the side of the vehicle here, first thing, side marker light, make sure it's clean, fitted and secure. We're going to check the tyres again, tread depth limit. We'll get down underneath and check in between. Yep, all okay. Coming along here, we need to look at the exhaust system, make sure it's secure, which we can see underneath there. We'd explain to the examiner we're checking the exhaust. And then we're going to come along here, we see the indicator working. So we come to the front tyre now, same checks as we've done on all the other tyres, checking the tread depth limit, inflation, wheel nut secure. We're now going to check the security of the front mirror. We'll go around to the front. All the lights are working there. We can see all the lights are working on this side. We also need to check on top of the cab to make sure the side marker lights are both working. Now we want to check the condition of the wiper blades and wiper arms. So we're going to pull them back, check there's no defects, no splits, etc. Just make sure the spring is working. Same on the other side. Okay, and that completes the safety checks that we need to make before driving the vehicle on the road. So question 8, loading the vehicle. You've been asked to collect half a load of steel plates on an empty vehicle. Show me by pointing to the correct distribution areas on this vehicle where the load should be placed. All we need to do is simply point towards the headboard and say we'd put it up there. So now we'll go on to the second part of that question. Okay, so for the second part of this question we're going to be using this framework here. The examiner will ask you to select the correct restraining device for carrying some steel. So over here we've got the devices, and we're going to select the chain and tensioner. So first of all we're going to hook the chain on here, and then we're going to slide the chain over to the far side, and we're going to secure it on here, making sure the hook is round this way. Next thing to do, pull all the slack down. And now we're going to collect the tensioner. We'll attach the tensioner like so. I'll show you a close-up of this in a moment. And we're going to select that on there. Now we're going to do the ratchet up to take up the tension. And that's that part of the question finished. Now the examiner will ask you to remove the tensioner. Now we'll remove it like this. Take it off. Put it more. We'll place this back on the floor. To remove the hooks. That's that question over and done with. So now I'm going to show you a little bit close in more detail how we connect up that tensioner. Okay, so we're going to take a little closer look here now. To attach this, we've got this little slot here. You need to make sure it goes on a flat part of the chain, like so. So it's securely in there. We do the same on the other side, making sure it's on the flat part. And that's securely in there. And now we're just going to turn this handle to take up the tension. Right, so that's fully tensed up now. We now need to change this to release it. Okay, so looking from the side view here, we can see this is up now, so that's tightening. To make it unwind, we need to press this lever forward, and now it will go the opposite direction and release the tension. And remove the hooks. Okay, that's that question. Okay, question number 9, assessing emergency situations. you suspect a brake fault on this vehicle, show me what checks you could carry out to make sure the compressor is working properly. So what we're going to do is we'll turn the ignition on so we can see the air pressure gauge, and then we're going to pump the brake pedal, one, and we'll keep pumping it until the warning buzzer comes on. There we go, now it says stop. Okay, so now we've emptied the tank. What we now need to do is restart the engine to make sure the compressor is working properly. So clutch down, neutral. Once the buzzer's gone out, we now need to check the air pressure gauge, and we're just basically going to let it tick over until the air tanks are fully charged, and then we check the air system for leaks. So just letting it tick over. At the moment it's quite low there. Okay, so now the air tanks are reading full, we're going to exit the vehicle. So we'll stop the engine, apply the foot brake, and listen for an air leak. We can't hear anything at the moment. Now, one of the things we could do is, before we get out of the vehicle, use something to jam the brake pedal down so that we can walk around the outside and listen for an air leak. Okay, so now we're outside the vehicle, we want to physically check the air lines. So on this vehicle we'll open up the bonnet and we'll make a physical check of the air pipes that we can see, and we'd explain to the examiner that we'd walk around and listen for an air leak. Okay. Okay, question 11, assessing emergency situations. So the examiner will say you're driving on a motorway and flames appear from the engine compartment. Show me how you would deal with this small electrical wiring fire. So what we're going to say is we'd explain it, we'd stop quickly and safely as possible on the hard shoulder. We'd turn the ignition off and remove the key to isolate the ignition. On some vehicles they have got a separate isolation switch outside which we'd use. And then we'd explain we'd exit the vehicle preferably from the left side because it's a little bit safer. And then we'd assess the situation and call the emergency services, either using your mobile telephone or one of the motorway telephone systems that we've got. Okay, now the examiner will ask you which type of fire extinguisher would you use on this type of fire. He'll have a diagram exactly the same as this, and you need to point to which one. So we'd go to the end one here, the carbon dioxide, CO2. Okay, and that's the end of that question. Okay, question 13, security of vehicle and its contents. The examiner is going to say you've been given a different vehicle for the day to drive. Show me all the practical and visual safety checks you'd make before driving this vehicle. Okay, so now we're going to do the cockpit drill. First we make sure the door is secure, seat is correctly adjusted, steering is set properly, and that the mirrors are clean and adjusted and secure. Okay, so now we're going to turn on the ignition and make sure all the warning lights are working. So now what we're going to do is depress the clutch and start the engine. And we'll check that the air tank is reading full, that we have all the warning lights and buzzers have gone out, and that we've got sufficient fuel for the journey. When checking for air leaks, make sure you've got the door or window open, depress the brake pedal, listen for any air leaks, and check the gauges for any drops in air pressure. So if you're using one of our newer box vehicles, the dashboard is slightly different. Same checks though, so what we do first of all is turn the ignition on and make sure all the warning lights have come on. And then we're going to start the engine. We need to get the air pressure gauges up. So we're now going to press the multi-function button, 1, 2, 3. We've now got our air pressure gauges up, and we'd say to the examiner, we'd point to them and we say we're making sure the air tanks are fully charged and that all warning lights and buzzers have extinguished, and that we've also got enough fuel for the journey. We'll also check the operation of the washers and wipers. And we're going to check the horn is working. And we're now going to check that all the mirrors are all okay, clean and fitted and tidy. That's it. And now we're going to turn the engine off, turn all the lights on, need the ignition on for the fog light. So we've got dips and full beam, hazard lights, and we'll walk around the outside and check them. At this point we could ask the examiner to assist us in checking the brake lights. Okay, so let's exit the vehicle. Okay, so we come to the outside of the vehicle now. First thing we come across is the front wheel. We need to explain to the examiner that we check the tread depth to make sure it's got at least 1 millimetre of tread across 3/4 of the breadth of the tyre and around a continuous band. No damage to the side walls, no cord showing, no bulges, no cuts or splits, and that it looks correctly inflated. Then we're going to check the wheel nuts, making sure that none of the wheel nuts stick out any further than the others. Now we're going to come across the repeater light for the indicator at the side here, make sure that's working. And then we've got these side marker lights down here. You need to make sure they're fitted, clean, and not damaged, and you can see they're working. Same with this one. Now coming across the rear wheel, same checks again, making sure it's got the correct tread depth limit. We're also going to get down and check in between the tyres to make sure there's no debris stuck in between them. And here now we're looking in between the tyres to make sure there's no signs of any bulging, tyres touching, kissing, and no debris, rocks, etc. in between the two tyres. Now we'll go around the rear of the vehicle. So around the back of the vehicle we're going to check all the lights are working, clean and fitted. Checking the number plate is clean as well. Now we'll go around the side of the vehicle. First thing, side marker light, make sure it's clean, fitted and secure. We're going to check the tyres again, tread depth limit. We'll get down underneath and check in between. Yep, all okay. Coming along here, we need to look at the exhaust system, make sure it's secure, which we can see underneath there. We'd explain to the examiner we're checking the exhaust. And then we're going to come along here. We see the indicator working. So we come to the front tyre now, same checks as we've done on all the other tyres, checking the tread depth limit, inflation, wheel nut secure. We're now going to check the security of the front mirror. Okay, so coming around the front of the vehicle, first thing we're going to do is check all the lights are working there. We can see all the lights are working on this side. Now we want to check the condition of the wiper blades and wiper arms. So we're going to pull them back, check there's no defects, no splits, etc. Just make sure the spring is working. Same on the other side. Okay, and that completes the safety checks that we need to make before driving the vehicle on the road. Okay, a couple of things we need to be aware of. We need to know the dimensions of the vehicle. So first of all, the height. Any vehicle above 3 meters in height must have the height clearly displayed in feet and inches. We can just see it up here now today. We also need to be aware of the maximum weight of the vehicle, which we can find on the plating certificate here. We should also be aware of the unladen weight of the vehicle, which we can find here on this vehicle. And on the door here we can find the width of the vehicle. On some of the newer vehicles we can find the length of the vehicle and also the width. It doesn't tell us the height, but that would be inside the cab. So question 16, loading the vehicle. You delivered part of your load and are left with a load of empty roller cages inside your box van. Show me by pointing to the correct distribution areas on this vehicle where the load should be placed. So what we do is just simply point to the headboard. Okay, so for the second part of this question we're going to use this device here. The examiner will ask you to select the correct restraining device. You have a choice of either webbing or a tension bar. We'd recommend you use the tension bar, it's slightly easier. So we're going to walk over and select it. This is the item here. So to get it ready, first of all, we need to release the catch. We're going to place it in between these two sides here. Don't put it too tight because you won't be able to tension the bar up. So now we're going to pull the black lever up. That's a little bit too tight there, so I just need to release it a little, and I'll try again. And then we're going to push this down hard until it clicks into place. That's it, and that is now secure. Once you've done that, the examiner will now ask you to remove the device. So we have this little chrome lever here, and the black one, we have to squeeze the black one down, push that chrome one down, the handle will now come up, and we'll remove it like so, and place it back on the ground. Okay, so I'm going to show you that a little closer now. So we've got the black handle down, we're going to slide it across. If we actually put it on touching both sides, we'll find that we can't actually get the lever up. So just make sure it's a little bit off, and then pull the black lever up. I still can't do it, a little bit more room. And then push it down, so the silver clasp here locks in place. Okay, and that's nice and secure. To release it, we have this silver clasp here. We need to push it down, the black handle will pop up, and then we can remove the device and stick it back on the floor. Okay, so question 18, loading the vehicle. You're about to make a very long journey beyond the fuel range of your vehicle. Show me what checks you'd make to the vehicle's fuel system. So first we need to do is check the fuel gauge. So we turn on the ignition and we're going to check the fuel gauge. We come outside the vehicle now, we're going to check the fuel tank. We'll be looking at the mountings to make sure they're not rusted and that it's secure. We're going to check the fuel cap security, make sure there's no leaks around there. We'll also look to make sure there's no diesel underneath the tank. Now the examiner is going to say, can you explain what precautions you would take to make sure you don't run out of fuel? So first of all, we'd explain that we'd make sure we've got a fuel card if necessary, or maybe some cash to buy some fuel in case we need it. And we'd also check that the fuel levels and also the fuel cap security. Okay, question 19, loading the vehicle. Show me how you would check the maximum authorised mass of this vehicle. So what we need to do is open the door, where we can find the plating certificate. Now on the plating certificate it tells us it's got a gross vehicle weight of 12 tonne. What we need to do to find out the payload is remove this 500 kilos for the diesel and the driver, and then we're going to move along. Here we can see the unladen weight of 7.5, so the 7.5 plus the 5 equals 8, so if we take away the 8 tonne from the 12 tonne, it gives us a payload of 4 tonne. Okay, now the examiner will say, show me what other checks you'd carry out to make sure the vehicle is not overloaded. So we'd explain that we check the paperwork relating to the load, or we check the load to find out the weight of the boxes, etc. Next we could show him how we check for signs of bulging, twin tyres kissing. So we'd come over here, we're looking between the tyres to make sure there's no signs of any bulging, the tyres touching, kissing as they call it. And now they would say, if you're still in doubt, what else could you do? Well, we'd explain we'd take the vehicle to the nearest weighbridge so we could check the weight of it. Okay, so thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you found it helpful. Let me take this opportunity to wish you good luck for your exam, and I hope you enjoy your driving career. Thank you very much.